All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm Jason Thibodeau, your host with JMJ Financial. This is the Mordo Mortgage Podcast. So I have with us today Jason Thomas. He's one of our loan officers at the Huntington Beach branch. And I have with us today Holly McDonald. So Holly is one of the realtors that works alongside of Jason Thomas. And one of our commitments in this marketplace, especially with everything going on right now, is there's a very low barrier to entry in real estate. And our main commitment right now is to make sure that we bring on true professionals that have immersed themselves in their career in real estate. And Holly represents that. So we wanted to have her on. There's a lot going on right now, whether it's the NAR settlement, the low inventory on our Southern California marketplace. So with that, I just wanted to give it over to Holly, say hi, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know that you have an interesting background because you've dabbled in it. You're obviously heavily into social media right now, but you got your start, if I understand it correctly, in HGTV and reality TV when it comes to things related to real estate, which is kind of fun. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that and figure out how it is you got to where you were at. And welcome on to the podcast, by the way, Holly.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor. So yes, I did start out in TV production, and essentially I did do a lot of shows that were based around the premise of home remodeling and real estate. I spent some time with Home and Garden Television, working on House Hunters and a couple of other cool remodel shows that were all about like the craziness of the market back in 2006, 2007. And people were just looking at what sort of improvements they could do to their homes in order to maximize the value. And so we did a lot of cool research on that. And it was just really fun to be like on the outside looking in at that. I always loved real estate, and eventually being in that like realm and surrounded by so many awesome realtors all around the globe, because we did do international shows too, I realized what a cool calling it is to be in real estate. So I eventually decided that long term, I wanted to be in real estate.
Interesting. So that was all the way back in 2006, you said?
Well, I was doing the shows until about 2008. And then I kind of made the transition into real estate. I got my license in 2009, 2010. So when the market had shifted, it shifted for the reality shows too, because some of the shows I was with, people were still buying homes and we could still film, and House Hunters is still a beast of a show. It's still going today. But there was a change in the marketplace. And even though maybe it wasn't the best time to, get into real estate, knowing what I know now, I think it was actually a really good opportunity because I was able to see the market in a time where it was really challenging and have that time to learn about the business of real estate. So, it can be applied instead of just jumping in when everybody else is and everything is crazy. You really get a good chance to like lay the groundwork.
I have a ton of respect for realtors that started in 2008, because that was not an easy time in the market. There was tons of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And it was the loan officers and the realtors that saw it through from 2008, 9, and 10 that went on to have great careers, whereas a lot of folks just simply got out of the business, right? If I had $1 for every time I heard a loan officer or somebody talking to me saying, I used to be in the business, and it was always before 2008, right? And then when it got hard, there's this mass exodus out of the industry, whether it's on our end, the loan officer side, or your end, the real estate side. So that's why we have you on, by the way. You're a true pro, and it's a really cool carve out that you had and the unique perspective that you bring with the fact that you were in the HGTV arena, which is obviously still very popular today. We're going to get into some granular detail, and Jay, feel free to jump in here in a little bit. But what I want to do is just start things off with a general overview from your perspective, Holly McDonald. What do you think of this market right now? Where do you think we're heading?
Well, right now, I think the biggest news is that we have low inventory. We've had low inventory ever since COVID started, really, and it's just never gotten back to the place where it used to be. The interest rates certainly haven't helped that because we obviously had that very low period of interest rates where people were, they were all dying to get into homes because the rates were so low. And then, of course, the rates have gone up a lot, which keeps a lot of people feeling like they're stuck in their homes. So people are moving, but obviously it's harder for them to do so and be able to like swallow that higher interest rate. I do think that we have seen it be a more positive start to the year, at least from what I'm seeing locally. We are seeing like more homes are coming on the market. People are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel as far as the interest rates go. I think we're past the peak of the height of the interest rates, and surely they will come down. It's just a matter of time. But I think a lot of people are recognizing that if they can get in and maybe accept a higher interest rate for a short period of time, there's always going to be an opportunity to refinance down the road. And if that gets you into your dream house, the house prices, even with the rates going up, haven't come down. The house prices have only gone up. So I think people are realizing that if they're waiting for house prices to crash and like get their deal, that might not be the best strategy.
Yeah. It feels like a relief that 2023 felt like a bottom in terms of not pricing, but transaction volume, right? Because we're seeing the same thing. It's been a couple years like this, and I think at a certain point, life circumstance, you got to move, you got to buy a home, right? Your family's growing, you've had another kid, or whatever the situation is. Given enough time with these higher rates, at some point, you have to continue forward in life. And I think that people are getting used to the new normal, if you will. I also agree with what you said. I think rates are going to settle down. Nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody knows when interest rates are going to actually more meaningfully drop. And then nobody believes it's going back down to 3% or anything like that. But I think normal would be nice in the 5% range. And whether that's 6 months from now or 18 months from now or whatever is anyone's guess. I think the main message is, can you afford the home? Is this a home that's right for you and your family, right? There's the paralysis by analysis that people tend to fall into with, oh my God, this is the best time, or my Uncle Bob said this, and my Aunt Nancy said that, and everyone's got an opinion. It can get very overwhelming. Social media, mainstream media, there's like chaotic. Right? Like the message I try to give people is this the right home for you and your family? Can you afford the payment? If the answer is yes, then buy the home. You're going to be there for 10 years. You're never going to be able to pick the perfect time to buy. So that's my 2 cents. Jay, tee it up, man. What do you got?
But, like you said, it is starting to become more of a new normal. I think people are starting to realize, rates are still in the 6 to 7% range, and they've been there for well over a year now. So it's not as much of a shock anymore. And like you said, life does move on. People do need to move. They need to get into homes. They need a place to live. Holly, are you seeing that calming down a little bit with some of your other buyers as well, where they're not sitting there telling you, no, I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait out this market for it to crash. Are you seeing a little bit more positivity from buyers in regards to that?
Certainly, I am. I'm seeing it more so from buyers that are maybe newer to the market. The ones that have been kicking the can down the road, so to speak, and waiting for the rates to fall. Some of those people I think are still going to wait for that. I think that's just like their mindset. But newer buyers that are entering the marketplace, people that maybe have just gotten new jobs or they've just gotten engaged or married, who do have that dual income and can kind of swallow and appreciate that payment. They are seeing that as like, this is just normal. That's their baseline now.
Yeah. Right on. Yeah. What else, Holly? There was a couple things you wanted us to bring up, but refresh my memory. There was a certain thing that you mentioned in regards to home flipping and the kind of the granular detail of what's going on in the markets right now.
Yeah. What I'm seeing a lot of, especially in our area at the moment, is first of all, there are a ton of investors out there, which really, it goes to show that they have confidence in the economy and like what sort of return they can get, because when the investors shrivel up, they don't think they can make a return on it. But every day I'm getting solicited by the investors. They are out there. There's not a lot of inventory for them. But if they can scoop something up and turn around and make it shiny, new, beautiful, trendy, those homes are getting such a high return. buyers are like certainly more turned on to them. I think a lot of buyers have been like conditioned to like the luxurious type of feeling places. There's so
Yeah,
many
Holly,
luxury.
what's your advice on this, right? So a first-time buyer, on one hand, it's a sign of health and confidence, like you said, on the market. On the other hand, um, I feel a certain kind of way about investor saturation in the marketplace, and kind of like first-time buyers coming up against cash offers and low
Yeah,
inventory situations where it can be really challenging for them.
yeah.
Like, if you're a first-time home buyer, do you have coaching for them in the context of this marketplace right now?
Yeah. So I mean, I think that a lot of first time buyers, it is going to come down to payment. And it's hard because it is very hard to compete against the cash offer. If the cash offer is appealing in terms of the price and the terms and everything. I mean, a lot of cash buyers are also looking for a deal. So a lot of the
They're
flippers that are
also
out there.
difficult too sometimes, aren't they? Like, you've been on the listing end where you're dealing with a cash buyer, and it's almost like they hang that over your head as an
Mhm.
excuse to be able to behave poorly throughout the transaction, right?
Yeah.
I've noticed the motivation level of the cash buyer isn't quite as, like, if you've got a first time home buyer, married couple with a couple kids, and they're super emotionally attached to the house. Yeah, they're only putting 5% down, right? And yes, they have financing and appraisal contingencies and whatnot. They're paying close attention at the home inspection, but they love the house. They're motivated, right? They're not going to give you a hard time. And I think that that gets lost in every time I was like, oh, well, I got this cash offer. Well, a lot of times you're just asking for heartache because the cash offer feels like they've got all the leverage and they don't behave very well throughout the transaction.
Yeah, well, and that brings up a really good point. I think it's really important for first time buyers to understand like how they need to be grateful in a way for getting the house. Even though the cash buyer might be difficult, they can also be easy. I mean, sometimes it just depends on the
Yeah,
buyer. Yeah.
totally.
Sometimes you just have to go through the ringer a few times to understand like how much competition there is, especially for first time buyers. I think a lot of the time they are getting advice from their parents and their aunts and their uncles and their coworkers and everything, and thinking that, well, this isn't how it was done in, 5 years ago, let's say. But the fact is
Or
that
30 years ago, depending on how old the person is that they're talking about. Yeah.
but even in just a short time frame, I mean, like, look at how different the market is now versus 2021. I mean, I am working with some people that are comparing, in 2021, you might have gotten 20 offers in 5 minutes and for 200,000 above the asking price. And that's not really the case today. I mean, obviously it depends on the property, but typically you're going to get a couple of offers. Maybe it takes a couple of weeks to get an offer. It very much varies. But in 2021, I mean, if you weren't getting an offer, there was something very wrong with the property. So, I think it just depends on what's going on in your current market. And it's really good to be seeing what's currently happening so that you can kind of gauge your strategy.
You're teeing this up for a great point. This is where it's so critically important to hire a good agent. You know what I mean? Like, it's been so painful sometimes for me on the lending side because I don't have control over who some of my borrowers hire. Past clients will call me. I don't know the realtor. Man, I've seen some really difficult situations where they're just not set up for success. They strike out after strikeout after strikeout. And look, it's not easy to get into escrow as a first time buyer right now, but like, can you speak to a little bit to what it looks like to hire the right agent? Like, I think people are confused. They get the referrals, they have all the opinions from family. I talked earlier in the beginning of this podcast about the barrier to entry being very low, right? People dabble in real estate. It's fairly easy to get your real estate license. I think we all know somebody who has a day job that also has their real estate license. So do you have any advice for first time hires to maybe avoid the pitfalls of making a bad hire?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really a good idea to meet with the agent and have a discussion about the expectations and what you can expect the agent to do for you because everybody can go online and find houses right now. It's very easy. But it's not just about finding the house. It's about securing the house and the whole like communication process throughout and the guidance process throughout. Because let's face it, buying a home is one of your biggest investments. And honestly, there are a ton of steps and there's a ton of like legal things to know. And if you don't know what you don't know. So you need to be working with an agent who really does know the ins and outs. I can't speak to how much somebody else might know, but you definitely want to know how much your agent is able to help you out and has that experience.
Yeah. So maybe, am I hearing you say interview more than one agent rather than just going blindly with Uncle Bob's recommendation?
I think you should certainly explore your options a bit, because you don't want to it's just like shopping for a car. I mean, typically you're going to try a couple of different cars and see how it feels. Now, there are a lot of changes that are going to be happening in our industry soon with the NAR settlement that you might have been hearing about. So it's not going to be as easy as just clicking a button on a website to schedule a tour with an agent, and then trying to figure out who to have a relationship with. You are going to have some sort of relationships from the get-go just to even see a house. And a lot of that is still being sorted out, and it's not in effect just yet, but it's coming. And as we have more information about how that is going to play out, obviously we'll be updating buyers about that. But I do think that buyers need to know that, you do have to have some sort of relationship with the agents. And it's probably good now to start meeting agents and finding out what their services are, because if they can't tell you what they're doing for you, how do you know that they're going to help you the right way throughout the process?
Yeah.
I think it's actually going to be a very good positive thing. And as far as the industry goes, I mean, change is typically a good thing, and we do need it for progress. And I think it'll just help people feel more like they've got someone else's back. So those things are all really good. It's just how it's going to shake out that we're still figuring out.
Yeah. I guess what a lot of people may not realize is this settlement that you're hearing about over and over again on social media and the media is that it's still in a proposed phase, right? Nothing's been signed by the judge or made final, and who knows what the final result of that looks like, and who knows how this actually translates and dilutes down to in the actual real world of real estate. I honestly just think that the fact that there's going to need to be a buyer broker agreement moving forward with clarity around representation is going to help the buyer, is going to help the buyer's agent. I think, like you just said, Holly, I think the net result's going to be pretty positive. Everyone was losing their minds during Dodd-Frank in 2010 on the loan officer side, and it ended up being a positive for loan officers. So I don't know. I've been through it before a few times now with major changes, market shifts, and I try not to be, so easily following the herd mentality and the emotional reactivity and the fear. We got to let it play out, and I don't think it's going to be a bad thing. I think that's all we'll say about the NAR settlement, because everyone, has been talking about this ad nauseum, and I think you stated it well, Holly.
Thank you. Yeah, I do think that for buyers out there, though, and this is not about the NAR settlement anymore, but just in general, I think it's really good to have somebody who represents you that can help you really get through the whole process, and not even just from finding the home, but through going through the inspections. Like I said before, a lot of buyers are really entranced by the houses that are all, they look shiny and beautiful, and they're probably flips, and not to bash flips, because some can be done really, really well, but some are not. And you really need a trained eye and experience and advocates on your side who can help you decide if this is really the home for you, because it is a big investment. And if there's a lot of things that were done poorly, you're going to be stuck with it.
Yeah, bad flip basically, to put it colorfully, is lipstick on a pig, right? And if you're not a trained eye and you're emotionally attached to the bells and the whistles of what on the surface looks beautiful on a poorly done flip, and you've hired Aunt Betty's, hairstylist to represent you, guess what's going to happen? You're going to make a poor financial decision. So just keep reiterating, right? That 10,000 hours of mastery is what's required in any industry to actually be good at this. And it's the job of Holly to not be the emotionally reactive, adding fuel to the fire of emotional reactivity in these situations. It's your job to walk into these home inspections, or at least just in the initial stage of showing a flip, and you're the one who's going to be able to tell quickly, oh my gosh, this was really well done, this flip. Yes, I can see through the lines. I can see the forest for the trees. This makes sense. Let's do this. Or it's like, no, we're not buying this home. Let me tell you why. And that's life-changing, right? Because if somebody makes a bad financial decision and buys the lipstick on the pig flip, they're going to be in the state of regret for years on that, right? And unwinding a house that needs a ton of extra repair than they originally thought. So that's where the value is. And Jay alluded to something earlier, like with commissions, somebody who's a family member who cuts their commissions and have to represent you. If it takes, like Jay said, 6 to 12 months to get into escrow and the negotiating process is poor too, like how much money did you just leave on the table? If we're appreciating at roughly 5% a year, do the math on an $800,000 home, you've cost yourself 50 grand all to save 5 or 10 grand on commission. Like there's the penny wise, pound foolish issue here. And that's why we have agents like you on, just to make sure people are hearing this. And it's not to be rude or difficult or negative, but this is huge, right? There's contracts involved, moving trucks involved, massive quantities of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of money changing hand. This is life changing stuff. So you got to make sure you're hiring correctly.
Yeah. And one of the things that Jay does that I really appreciate is he's always on top of trying to find out ways that buyers can like get into a property by analyze. I mean, I'm sure everybody at your company does this, but helping to analyze like what they can do to improve their financial position, whether it's paying off some loans or whether there are some special incentives out there. I know he was just helping me with one of my properties that's on the market and finding different ways that like buyers might not know could save them money to get them into the home. They might see the headline of like, this is what interest rates are this week, but there could be ways to save money on that.
Yeah, what Jay won't tell you is he's probably the most technically sound loan officer in the industry. But he's got integrity and he doesn't have a big ego, so you're not going to hear that from him. Him and I are brothers from another mother because we've known each other since grade school, and he's the guy that would show up to a difficult test and not study and get an A+ or somehow get 108%. I never understood how he got more than 100% without trying. So I'm at a stage in my career as branch manager where I do less of the originating, more of the leadership, running the branch, recruiting. And when I do have clients that are complicated, guess who's getting the transaction? It's because it's better in his hands than mine, right? Because of what you just alluded to, Holly. 150 IQ helps with that. But, Holly, is there anything else you wanted to talk about? I think there was something, or Jay, you mentioned something about something.
So thank you for that. There is an amazing program that I've been able to use with some sellers that allows you to borrow money with no like upfront costs. You can borrow a certain amount of money to improve your home, ultimately to be able to recoup that money and earn a higher sales price. And I just think it's so incredible because I know a lot of times when people are contemplating a move, it's overwhelming. I mean, everybody wants to know what their bottom line is going to be, and you're moving away from a home. So you're less inclined to want to fix it up because then, you could have enjoyed that, but you chose not to, and you're fixing it up for someone else. But the fact of the matter is, in this market, with things being so expensive to begin with, and also just overall home improvement remodeling costs are up too. A lot of buyers just want the turnkey property that they don't have to think about. They're too busy. They don't want to schedule like remodeling things. So if you can borrow the money, make the improvements, have an analysis done on how that's going to recoup for you, and how much faster that's going to make your home sell, how much more appealing it's going to make it. This is such a great way for you to do that. So I just think that the Compass Concierge Program is what it's called, is such a value add for home sellers in terms of them being able to sell their home faster and for a higher price and not having to come out of pocket for those expenses.
Yeah. Well,
that's a really good point. Sorry, Jay. I was just going to say, because like we were talking about earlier, more often than not, buyers, especially first-time home buyers, they don't want to deal with the home improvement. I mean, if you just look at how many offers come in on a turnkey home versus, what's quote unquote a fixer or is a little bit outdated, you're definitely going to get a much higher price and a lot more offers more than likely on the turnkey home than you are on something that's a fixer, because it's just not something that buyers are going to want to deal with.
Curb appeal matters.
Yeah.
Staging matters. Who you hire matters. All this stuff matters. It's called optimizing and using professionals and platforms like Compass and good agents like Holly. No, it's great. Okay. Anything else you would have us know, Holly, before we wrap up? We try to keep this to 30 minutes, so the floor is yours in wrap-up mode.
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot today, honestly, but I do think that the market this year is off to a good start.
Yeah.
There's a lot to look forward to. I'm happy to see that people are starting to get moving again and looking forward to, their new adventure. I think moving for a lot of people is therapeutic in a way. It's like it's a spring cleaning, if you will. It's the new adventure. And I'm happy to see like my clients are making that happen. And ones that have been on the fence for a while are looking forward to that happening sooner rather than later.
Right on. Okay, I did remember to ask, don't you have a podcast, and how do they get a hold of you, and where would they find you on for the podcast or Instagram or anywhere else? Because I know you're heavily involved in your efforts in social media too.
Yeah, thank you. So I do host a podcast. It's based around the community of Costa Mesa, which is one of the areas I serve and love so much. It's called the Costa Mesa Pod. You can find it on Apple iTunes, and it's really about the lifestyle there and the businesses and things that set it apart so that people can understand the community and also find out more about the community and the people that live there. And then I'm also on Instagram at Realtor Holly McDonald, and I post a lot there. I post a lot about either listing opportunities that I have, a lot of tips about what's going on in the marketplace, and then a little bit of my family sprinkled in. And you can reach me there. Or you guys can list my phone number or something.
Yeah, and just a reminder to everyone listening, we will include links to the Instagram, to the YouTube channel, to the podcast on iTunes. Anywhere else they would want to be looking for you?
That's probably the best places, I would say.
Cool. And if you can, just go ahead and state your phone number here if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, 714-928-4682.
Right on. Okay. Holly, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate all the good work you do and representing and giving a good name to our industry. We really do. We need good professionals like you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for all you guys do too. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Holly.
All right. Thanks, everyone.